Yeah.
Okay, Pharaoh, Hillary Clinton. I'm going to talk about that today. And because there's so many similarities between what was happening then and what's happening now. And the riches of Egypt in the day of Moses, they were extremely rich. Just like a lot of people are in today's society, especially in America. In Egypt, it seemed like that they were the center of metropolis. Everything they did went from without to all the rest of the world. They were like the leading point of the world, just like America is today. But anyway, and it being so similar, God is setting the scene exactly the way that it was in that day. In that day, of course, the king of Egypt, who was called Pharaoh, the people looked to him for their wealth and for all their living and to keep things going. And look at this, and it said, and they did the same thing back in that day. It says, yeah, just like Hillary, all the liberals are doing the same thing with Hillary today. They are her hope to keep things going. Liberal, the word liberal means to be applied heavily, or to be very much of, or to give freely, abundance. That's what the word liberal means. That's why liberals call themselves liberal, and of course conservative is just the opposite of that. And the Jews back in this day was very conservative. They were slaves. And the Egyptians were very liberal. I mean, they had servants. It's just like today that God has caused Israel to serve Egypt back in that day, and right now today, all the conservatives are serving the liberal. The president of all the liberals, he's sitting up there in the White House, and he's taking from people money through taxes, through heavy taxes, and giving it away freely to liberals. Liberals sit back and they kick up their feet and they say, what's the new goodies coming along today? You know, and back in those days, if they needed a servant, they just go out and get them a Egyptian slave, or not Egyptian, but a Hebrew slave, and then bring him into their house and have them to do all their chores while they sit around and look at the walls and twiddle their thumbs. And that's exactly what's happening today with Hillary. And Hillary is the hope of the liberal world to keep things going. And just as it did in the old days, just as God did back in that day, God is doing today the same fashion in the same way. And you know, I just want to point all this stuff out because I want the world to know that God is doing this. And she is the weed that God's going to pluck, just like I've been saying. And listen to this, Hebrews. This was written in the Bible 2,000 years ago. It says, excuse me, it says, therefore they did set over them taskmasters, I'll get it right, to affirm them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasured cities one of them was called Pithom, and the other one was called Ramses. And I'm thinking that was names of the sons of Pharaohs. But anyway, and some of the riches of Egypt, you know, some of the most monumental, extraordinary sites we have today is left over from the Egypt of Moses' day. King Tut. Someone said that, I was reading here on the internet, somebody said that there was jewels and gold buried somewhere around there that was just in abundance, was coffin fulls of nothing but gold and jewels. Okay, so there's no doubt. This is how Israel became a slave. Okay, in Egypt, they went down. There was a drought in the land, and they went down in Abraham's day. I'm hoping I'm getting this right. But it was hundreds of years later. Through those hundreds of years of being there, they came in as guests. Okay, and or was it Jacob's day? I'll look that up and see if I can't put it down there exactly whose day that was. But it was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I think it was Jacob's day that they went down into Egypt. And they went in as guests, and they just came in, and they slowly, you know, through the looking down of the nose at the Hebrews, they became slaves. And that's exactly what society is happening in America today. The conservatives have become slave to the liberal. They come in and robbed your garden while you were in a bed asleep. Okay, and this is the same thing that's going on today in America. And the Lord is doing that because God has a habit of doing things in the same fashion and in the same way every time. It's His personality. And He does this. He stirs it up like this so the world can give attention to Egypt and to Hillary, to all these. This is why He did it then. He brought, you know, see, because Israel was not supposed to go down to Egypt to start with. You know, the thing that gets me is that why didn't those folks, you know, here is the people that knew God. Why didn't they get to know Him? Why didn't the godly standard, why didn't they join Israel instead of turning them into slaves? Well, this is the reason, because they had their eyes full of money. They were so rich. They already had their own gods. You know, that's the same thing that atheists tell me today. They say, well, which God are you talking about? There's dozens of them. Well, I tell them, well, the only God there is. I said, well, you obviously don't know history, or you wouldn't bother asking me that question. But this is why they didn't. And just like Hillary's wanting to keep this rich thing going for the liberals, and you know, enslaved. You know what happened the day that Israel moved out of Egypt? They were like helpless babies running around. They were spoiled. The Bible says they're not just spoiled, but I mean they were spoiled, man. I mean those folks were helpless. They had, all of a sudden, they had to dig their own gardens. You know, and this is exactly what's going to happen with Hillary and with the Democrats. They're going to be left without. You're training yourself to obtain your own demise. With Hillary, this is going to be a terrible. The world will look at this and say, "Oh my goodness, look at all those people living on the street. They're helpless. They don't know what to do." Well, because you have trained yourself to be a bum. You've trained yourself to do all these things, and you're going to be spoiled. God is going to spoil you just like He did in the days of Old English. Alrighty? Of Old England. And their lifestyles were rich and lavish, and they had no discipline, just like a lot of liberals are today. Conservatives send their children to school and train them to be disciplined, but there's not a lot of liberals out there that are doing that. They're not very well educated in the ways of, just like in the days of Egypt. All the people that were trained and had professions were of were the Jews. They were the Hebrews. They built all of that stuff by the hand of the taskmaster. They built They built all that stuff. Alrighty. God bless you. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you again tomorrow. Another great message right here, Crossing the Middle Ministry.